Hello friends, welcome back. Today we're going to be making another addition to our overall microservices project. This one's going to be called the URL Shortener Microservice. This one's quite involved, and as you can see I've got a bunch of tabs open, and these are all the documentation that I found in my way to kind of get there in the first place. But we're still going to use the same type of style of project. I have on the second tab I have my local host running, and that's running this guy. So if I were to refresh here, you'd see that we've got the timestamp and the request header parser. These are the last two projects. And then I've got the logs running on the production app because we have it actually running on production as well. So if I refresh here, this is on our production app that we use Heroku to deploy. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you might want to go through the last few videos to see the project work, and this is all kind of one big chunk. And then I've got here we are in my location. It's just in my useful programmer portfolio app. And if you list it out, you'll see that we've got that, and I can go Atom period to open it up with my Atom text editor. And you can see I'm already in my server file. And so this has all the timestamp and request header parser information in it. Like this is that same project. This is the request header parser, and then this is passed in value. This is the timestamp one, and so we're actually going to add we're going to keep all of this stuff in one, and so one of this singular portfolio project will exist in all of them. So when you get started on this, make sure that you log in to your Mongo db.com account. You're going to need access to your cluster, and for me I'm going to use the same cluster. You can see a few minutes ago I was using it to just run through this exercise before I did it this time. And then the documentation I'll just bring up as we come along. We're going to need to install quite a bit of stuff to get this working, but so let's get started. So this basically talks about what we're going to be doing. The URL shortener, it works like opening this one in a new tab. If you do a free code camp and you post the URL, it says that this is the original URL is to go to free code camp, and the short URL as it just has 2 here. Ours is actually gonna be better than this, but I think if you put 2 in here, it redirects to free code camp. So that's the idea. We're making a URL shortener. So yeah, that's the way we're going to do it. But the way that we're going to start this off is on my local host. This is where I'm going to be programming initially. Well, we want to make our URL shortener, right? We're going to make a project called URL. I'm just copying this, Shortener Microservice. And so the first thing we want to do, because of the way that we're doing this, we want to add a link here so that we can do that. So I'm going to come back over to Atom. I'm going to go into the index page where we're in the views, and then here we have a collection of links. So it's just these 2 links that show up here. Now we're keeping this really simple for now. I'm going to add this as a link here. And at the end of this series, I'll probably tighten this up and make this look cooler, but we're just going to create a new place for this to live, and we're going to call it URL Shortener Microservice. Okay, so if I save that and I refresh in my local terminal, you'll see that the URL Shortener Microservice has been added, and it links to here. Now if I click this, it's not going to go anywhere. That's not a problem. We expect that because we have not set up the Git path. And so here we've got the Git for the timestamp, the request header. We might as well just keep going on with this. I'm just going to copy this, and then I'm going to put in here, I'm going to say URL Shortener Microservice.html. Okay, so I can save this, and but if we refresh the page, we still won't get it because it can't find it because it's not there. So in the views, we want to add our URL Shortener Microservice.html. So we want to add a view which our route and our controller can point to. And so now we just say, I'm just stubbing this in here. And so if we save this in here and we refresh, it still doesn't work. The reason is we need to restart our server. So I'm pressing Control C to stop the server, and then I'm pressing the up button just because that gets me right back up to npm start, and then I just press enter. And now if we refresh the page, still doesn't work. Okay. .html server. Oh, cool. So yeah, I forgot to add it to here. And so we want to say if they get, right now I'm just saying get parser. So what I want to do is add the URL Shortener Microservice here. Now I'll save. I think if I refresh, it won't work. That's right, because we need to stop the server and then restart the server. And then we refresh here and we got it working. Now we can get started with the next part of the project. So we're going to use their GitHub repository. So I'm just going back to here. I want to go to this repository, open in a new tab, and then we have the code here, and this is what we'll use to get everything working. So the instructions are here. We're just going to copy their view so that we have that. Here they just have all the HTML that we need to complete this project. So we're just going to copy the project's HTML and throw it into our URL Shortener Microservice. And so this will make it so that our project looks similar to theirs. So if I save this and then we go back to our local host and I refresh the microservice, you can see that the instructions are here. And it looks like they're pulling different CSS. We wanted to have style CSS. I wonder why that's not working necessarily. But this isn't about CSS and I don't know. Maybe I should just fix that real quick. Let's see, public style CSS. We have public style CSS. That should be working. Public style CSS. Yeah, I don't want to get hung up on this because it's not important. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the style, the CSS, copy it here, and instead of having this guy here, I'm just going to say style, and then just pump it in here and press save. Because the look of these pages really isn't important to us for a lot of reasons. So if I refresh the page here, shorten microservices, there we go. Now it's working. So yeah, we want to have API/short URL 3 to work with this. Okay, so the first thing, I'm going to go back to the server and we're going to stop worrying about this because this is part of our app now. This could be refactored later, but we don't need to worry about making that thing be the cleanest of code right now. Okay, so we've got this hello, we've got this timestamp, we've got this date string, and then we've got the who am I, which was the last project. So now we'll start with our URL shortening service. Okay, so this was the, what was this? The header request. And then this was our timestamp project. Cool. And so a lot of the stuff that we're not going to need, but we do need to do some updates to our application because this is going to require some extra stuff. So yeah, let's just go back to, I can post a URL to project URL and I will receive a shortened URL in the JSON response. Okay, and so let's also check on the README of this boilerplate project. I think they give us some extra hints here. I can post a URL to project. Yeah. Okay. Okay, where it is their server file. Gives us some hints. So now we basically have all this stuff. Our package JSON is going to have to be adjusted. So now let's just go to server.js. And so the server's showing us that it's got this new thing, right? It's got Mongo and Mongoose are required. Now in our past Express apps, we have Express require Express, but we do not show Mongo and Mongoose. Now we do have the cores and the app Express already, but we need to add Mongo and Mongoose. And the best way, important thing about doing that is we need to add them via their npm packages. So we're going to go npm mongo, and that should get us MongoDB. Yeah, and so npm I MongoDB. That's what we're looking to install. I just want to triple check that by going back to the package.json. And if we look at their dependency, you'll see they've got MongoDB. Okay, cool. So we can take it back over to ours, and I'm just going to open up your package file so you can see this. Watch this dependencies here. We want to write in here npm I MongoDB, and we're going to see that in here, we'll see that MongoDB is going to enter. MongoDB, see? Now it's at the bottom. It's a little bit different from there, so we're using a more modern version, and that's fine with me. Okay, so now that we've got MongoDB installed, we also want to have Mongoose. So MongoDB is kind of like the database parts. npm. Yeah, MongoDB is sort of how the database, it's functions for the database, and then Mongoose is kind of functions for the way to access items in the database. So we're also going to grab npm I Mongoose, and then we'll put that over here. We're using the terminal to install Mongoose. And so you see we've got MongoDB here. Now we want to go npm install Mongoose. So once that's done, we'll see Mongoose in here. All right. And then let's see. Now we've got Mongo and Mongoose. And so what's another thing that we're going to need? We're going to need a way to parse our post requests. And so we've got this body parser one. Body parser makes it so that when somebody posts a URL to us, we can receive it as a JSON object. You know what? Perhaps I'll do this in just a second, because that one we can learn along the way. But we can see, oh yeah, they've got their body parser in here as well. So this was built in, and so I think that we should just go ahead and inject body parser into our app. Again, you could put it in here, or you can go npm I body parser, and then we're going to see body parser probably show up at the bottom here. Cool. It showed up at the top. Okay, so now we've got all of our dependencies, and if I come back over here, it says they've got body parser, we've got cores, we've got Mongoose, we've got MongoDB, we've got, and Express we have. So we have all of the dependencies that they have hit there. We also have EJS. I don't remember where that came from, but it doesn't make a difference specifically for now. So now we've basically copied our project. If we go to our local host, okay, if we go to our local host, now if we go URL microservices project, we can see that we're into here. And so this is, they want us to be able to set up, make an example post request to the free code camp. So let's go back over to our server file. And one of the things that we're going to have to do now is require each of the packages that we just started. So yeah, we want to have that right under Express. We're going to go there Mongo is equal to require, and we're going to say require MongoDB, and then there Mongoose was equal to require Mongoose. Now it's important to require the packages, because otherwise when you call functions, like down here we'll be saying, setting the schema files and things using Mongoose, and with Mongo we'll be setting up the database things, and so you want the methods that are held within these packages. So then here, yeah, they've got the cores. We've already got that. They set their app is equal to Express. They didn't set their port. Oh, now they are setting their port configuration. So since the last project, they started doing that with us. App.use cores, option success. We didn't have that in there. Use public. This just sets the static things. App get process CWD index. Okay, this we don't need because all this does is redirect us to the homepage, and we've already set our homepage up. They already have your first endpoint here so that they can kind of show it to you. And then we've got app.listen, and the listener, we have it app.listen, and then we're setting the port dynamically down here. But essentially we have everything that this one's doing. And so now we want to just add some endpoints for our project. So we want to go app.post, and we want, let's see, where are we posting to? API short URL new. So we're going to put in API short URL new. And then in here, we're going to do a function with a request and a response. This is just kind of static node stuff. And then in here, we'll want to do something with our requests. But my first thing is I like to work on things kind of iteratively. And so I'm going to go console.log. I'm going to say post request is called. And then we'll just take, on the next line, we'll say the request dot, I think params will get us there. And so rec dot params. Okay, and then we'll just respond.json with a object. So this just means that with the request, we're going to get a direct response back right away. And we'll just say that, we'll just call it a success, and we'll just say post request processed. And that'll just kind of give us a hint to whether or not we're going the right way. So once again, I'm going to go back to my, let's go back to the server, control C to stop the server, and then up npm start to start the server. And then when we refresh the microservices, cool, our app hasn't crashed. That means we probably haven't had any syntax errors. And now if we post the URL, we see that the post request has been called, and we're returning back a post request processed. And that's pretty cool. That's a good start. Now, I noticed my my rec.params was not what it needed to be. And so I need to figure out what it is that makes it so that we can get data into here. Okay, and the way that I'm going to kind of approach this is we're going to go back to our boilerplate URL shortening services, and then I'm going to go into server.js, and I'm just going to work my way down through here. Now, the first thing that I'm noticing that we have not done, they make a few notes in the comments here. Here we need to set up our database. Here we need to mount our body parser. And so I think that did we get body parser yet? No. Okay, so we want to mount body parser, and we want to set up our database. And so we already have Mongoose set here. So we've already brought in Mongoose. We've required it as a library here. So our next project is just going to be mongoose.connect. And then we're going to say process.env. db_URI. Okay, cool. And now my guess is that this won't work. If I were to run this again, npm start, I canceled it and I ran it, we get an error. Okay, why? The URI parameter to OpenRI must be a string, and we got undefined. So right now, process.env.dbURI is not functioning. So I'm going to show you guys how to get around this while we're operating locally. And then once we're in production, we'll be able to get this working by adding this to our Heroku settings. But for now, I want to go to the clusters, and you should have one sandbox cluster set up from previously setting up Mongoose. And so what we want to do is go to connect. We want to go to connect your application, and then we're going to copy this guy. And within this guy, and I'm just going to set it up here as like a, I'm going to say database URI. And I'm going to set this equal to this guy. Now, I can't show you how my password and my database name here because I don't want this to get jacked. So the rest of the time in this application, I'm never going to scroll up to this point. But just know that the database URI is up here, and I'm going to be using that here for now. I'm just going to comment this out because this is how we want to do it when we push to production. But when we just doing it locally, we're going to go mongoose.connect, and then we're going to go database URI. And I'm not going to push this code to the GitHub servers until I delete this line. But for now, I'm going to fill in my password, and I'm going to fill in my database name here, and that will cause it. And you want to make it so it's just like if your password was hello123, you'd want to do it like that. You don't want to put it in parentheses or anything like that. So I'm going to replace where it says password here and database database name here, and then we should be able to connect to the database using this guy. When we push to production, I will comment this out and delete that top line and then re-get this one. But I'm just going to enter my password and database name up there. Okay, so I've saved my database my database URI so that it should be showing up here. And so I want to come back here and stop the server and now restart it to see if we're loading it properly. Okay, currently URL string parser is deprecated. Okay, so we're using deprecated code here. So what does that mean? We should probably find out what's going on. So we can go to the Mongoose documentation, mongoosejs.com. And then we should just look for connections. So here on connections, we've got this guy, and they say you can connect to MongoDB with mongoose.connect method. So mongoose.connect, and then we set up the app. And look, they've got this new URL parser true. They're passing that in as well. New URL parser true. Okay, so that's what we want to do. We want to pass in right after our database URI. We're going to say new URL parser is equal to true. So now if I save that, I came back over here. Again, this is just a deprecation warning. It doesn't necessarily mean it's destroying or closing our application, but we might as well just take care of these issues now. So I'm going to cancel the server, and now I'm going to clear the terminal by pressing Command K, and then press Enter for npm start. There we go. Okay. And another one, it says that it will be moved in future versions. To use the new server discover and monitoring engine, pass unified topology true to the Mongoose constructor. Okay, so let's do this as well. So I'm going to copy that guy, and I'm going to run it, put it in here. I like to put my objects kind of lined out like that. So now if we save this, and we again, the server's running, but we can just stop it and start it again and see if we can get rid of all of our deprecation notes. Cool, deprecation messages are gone. We're basically operating with Mongoose properly. Okay, so mongoose.connect, we've done that one. I'm gonna come back over to this guy, mongoose.connect process env. Okay, we've taken care of this part of the project. The project needs to parse post bodies. So you should get body parser. So if they say mount body parser, what I think is you go to, I'm already here, but you're gonna just Google npm body parser. And then that's what'll show up. So we go to npm body parser. We can do npm install, which I think we already did actually. Body parser, yes, we're there. So we don't need to install it, yeah. But now what we want to do is just make sure we are requiring it. So this is the way that we require it. Yeah, we grab it, we require it, and then I like to throw my require statements up at the top with the other ones. And so now body parser is required, and so now we have these options to do the things that we need. And so if I were to go back here, we see you should mount body parser here. Let me go back to body parser. Mount body parser. Bodyparser.json. You might want to scroll through this and read some of this if that's your thing. Okay, body parser require app use function set header right. Okay, we're not doing that. App.post login rec.body.username coded parser JSON. Okay, body parser require body parser dot use body parser. Okay. App is express. That's what we're doing. Express route. That's the way we're doing this. JSON parser is equal to body parser dot JSON. URL encoded body parser dot URL encoded. Create application. I don't think we need to do that, but post we want to do. So URL encoded post function res user.name JSON parser post API users get JSON parser and then rec.body. Okay, cool. So let's do that. This is the JSON parser and this is the JSON parser. It's body parser like that. So I want to get this JSON parser. And we'll scroll down to here because we're doing that in the URL shortening project. So now we've got the JSON parser and then we've got app.post. And then we've already got a little bit of stuff here. So we've got our JSON parser with our rec and our close. So we could actually just inject this old code into their, sort of, this is like the way that the documentation says it. So copying documentation is usually a pretty cool idea. But we don't want app.users. I'm going to undo that. So we want it to be here. Like that. Okay. And then we're passing in JSON parser as well, but then we're also doing our function return. So yeah, here we could say post request processed. Yeah, well, we could save this now and just see where we're at. So I'm going to cancel, stop the server from running, and I'm going to restart the server. And then we're going to go back to the local web app and see how things are going. So if I go to the root, you can see here's the URL shortener. And then from here, we should be able to post this URL. Looks like the post request came through and our rec.params did not work. But that's not too surprising, right? Because we know that we want to do rec.body. And in here, we're calling rec.params. So we want to call rec.body. And then, yeah, so now we've got rec.body in there. So let's see if that gets us what we're looking for. And so I'm going to refresh the page, go back to the local host, and go back to the microservices project, post the URL, and it looks like rec.body did not work again. So we've got to figure this out. I did some research. We want to go express body parser. We need some documentation on exactly how these things work together. So Express.js has this body parser middleware. Yeah, I guess Express was the thing that we're looking for now. We want to figure out how to use Express and body parser together. So we've already got that guy at the top. We've just done the required statement. But if you scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see, okay, app.express, and now we're building an Express app. That's what we're doing here. And now we want to use body parser. And so we want to use it, and then we also want to use body parser JSON, and then we want to use, I'm not sure if we need to use that function right there. So I'm just going to copy this for now. This makes it so that we can use form URL encoded, which means, the way that we're passing it in. If you come back to here, we're passing it in via form. And so we want to get that possibility in there. Because this is part of this project specifically, I'm going to keep this down, but normally I would do this kind of app setup stuff up at the top. But yeah, let's save that. And instead of using the JSON parser, we'll just use app.use parser, and maybe this will get us where we want to go. So I'm going to save this, come back over here, Command C to stop the terminal, press the up button to start Node Package Manager to get our Node app running. It looks like it's listening. I go to 300, and that's our microservices here. And then I'm just going to post the URL. And okay, awesome. Look, now we're finally getting the request to come through. So this is the request.body. It looks to me like if we did rec.body.url, we would probably get the URL. It passed in as URL, which is kind of lame, but .url. And so, yeah, I mean, actually, we could probably just return this as well. Like, yeah, maybe original URL is equal to rec.body.url. And then short URL, here we need a shortened URL. So we save that, and then let's stop the server, run it again, and see if we can get some JSON out of this thing. And then so I can refresh the page in Chrome, it'll pass in the same thing. And so nice. Now we have it set in our program. So now we can start working with it here. So that's great. So let's go to this guy again. Mount body parser, we've got that complete, and the endpoints are all there. So we're actually at a point now where we just kind of have to think about how to do this on our own. So we're getting past in a request URL that we can deal with. So we could say let the client requested URL equal to rec.url, and just kind of clean this up a little bit. This will make it so that we can send the original URL and the short URL. And I'm going to want to do the suffix as well, because we're going to use a tool, suffix. We're going to use a tool to do this as well. So I'm going to create a variable called suffix. And I'm going to set that equal to how this tool works. And so after doing some research, I found this short ID. This is amazingly short, non-sequential, URL-friendly, unique ID generator. As you can see, you just basically require this, and then you go console log short ID.generate, and it makes something that looks like that. And so, yeah, you can just make things happen quickly. So the way same thing, node package manager, npm I, this guy. We'll come back to our working terminal tab, and I'm just going to type in npm I short ID, and you'll see that now if we put that in, we'll see that in our dependencies we have added short ID, and that helps us run the application, because now if we could cancel this, go back to our server. First we want to require short ID, so I'm going to go up to the top, and I'm going to go we're going to call it short ID. We're going to set that to require short ID. And then if we come back down to the bottom, well, what would we do now? We could console log, just so the next time we run a project we can see it. I'm going to just short ID, and then the way that you call it is you go short ID.generate. Right? And so we go .generate, and then we're going to say this will be our suffix. So yeah, if somebody's posted this, and yeah, well actually, you know what I'll do? Instead of doing it like that, I'm just going to go short ID.generate, put that here, and save it as the suffix variable, and then we're going to say that our suffix, this will be our suffix. Cool. And so next time we run the post request, we're going to be able to see that we're generating a short ID. Cool. So now, well, really our short URL could be saved now. And that is the next kind of big part of this, because if you don't remember doing our Mongoose things, I'm going to come back to free code camp. And if we go back, you see Mongo and Mongoose DB. Well, basically, we're going through this process, because here they've got, oh, look, they actually have the use unified topology, which we figured out earlier. So we've already connected, right? If we scroll up to the top here, mongoose.connect, we've got used unified topology. So we're doing the same thing here. Okay, cool. So what about, the next one is to create a model, right? And so here, it looks like we want to, first we need to create a schema. Yeah. Okay, so it's important to go to the Mongoose documents for this. I think that we could do something here. I'll just copy this. Nah, we don't need to do that. Okay, so Mongoose documents. I've already got them open to here. And, you can basically just start from here. My model, here we're going to say we want like a short, like a URL map. And we want that to be equal to a model, and we're going to have a schema in there. And so really we can just grab this guy and refactor it in our code. So I'm going to scroll back down to where we're doing this. And so our URL shortening service, first we want to build a schema and model to store saved URLs. Okay, that's just a comment to let us know where we are. We don't want to call it my model, right? I want to call it URL data, or yeah. I'm going to call it short URL. But with these, the convention is to have capital S, capital the first thing. So yeah, we could call it short URL, whatever. So we're going to call it short URL, and we're going to have a schema. And so in the schema, we want to make sure that we're passing the tests. So let's go back to see what specifically the project requests of us. So, yeah, we know that this will fail right now, but let's run the test just to fail to see what's going on. Oh, we just want it there, not here. Whoa. When I visit that shorten link, wow, we should not have passed these tests. That is an error. So I'm going to keep doing this project because we don't want to just say whatever. We don't even have the thing there. It's not even going to pass us back the right data. In our production app, it's a total mistake. So this is not working yet. If you want to call it there, you could, but you will not have done the important part of this project. So yeah, we want to have our short URL be a string. I'm going to put this on a separate line. And we want to have our original URL be a string. I want to also save our suffix because I want to be able to just search for it easily. And we'll make that a string as well. And that's what we can do for now. So now we've created a short URL. Now, sometimes you break the schema out, but for this one, it's really simple. So we're just going to keep it the way it is. And so now in here, we have our client requested URL. What we can do is do we can say create a new variable, and we'll say let our new URL equal a short URL, a new short URL, and within there we're going to pass in the object of what we want, right? And so we know our client requested URL needs to be there, but that's not our short URL, that's our original URL. So we'll make it so our original URL will be equal to the client requested URL. And then we want to be able to do our suffix in here. So our suffix will be equal to our suffix, which we've already saved here. And it's important to save it in a variable outside of it because we want to use it twice. And if you just generate a new one, you're going to get different results each time. And then what we also want to say is we want to set our URL, like our redirect. So when people go API short URL / whatever, they get to the right place. And so let our new short URL equal suffix plus we want to save our root directory. And do you remember how to get to that? You just come up to here and you go to dir name, which will give you that'll work for both production and local. And so we're going to come back down here and we're going to say our short URL. And we're going to make that the directory name plus we're going to say / API / short URL / and then we're going to add our suffix on here. So if it was ZZZ, it would be, usefulprogrammer.heroku.com / API / short URL / ZZZ. That would be the short URL, that would be the suffix. And then really what we could do is just pass, instead of short URL, we could say, oh, okay, so now we need to save it, right? So how do we save to our database? We've got our database connected. We've got Mongoose. We're using the Mongoose up top, but how do we save it? So we want to go back to Mongoose. And then I'm just going to press Command F, and I'm going to go to save. Okay, that doesn't have it. What about save in here? Res.json. Okay, this is more of the routing and how to move around. Router.method save. Okay, yeah, I think that'll be a Mongoose thing. So if we come back to the documentation, we say save here, we're going to say document.prototype save. And we've got the document. So document.prototype.save. Product.sold is equal to date.now. Product.await, product save. Let's see here. Model. Dot save. Express. Okay. This is how we find things. That's for later. How did we save things again? Okay, it's going to be in Mongoose. And so I think I want to say save. I'm going to search this one more time and say document.save. Saves the document by inserting a new document into the database. Okay, cool. We're going to do this one. Document.save. Returns a callback, a promise. Okay. I mean, maybe we can just go. Yeah, we can go new URL.save. And then, yeah, I want to find like examples of saving documents with Express and Mongoose. How to use Mongoose save. Object Rocket. Prerequisites. Mongoose.connect. We've already got that. Okay, we've got the schema in there. So here they're telling us to set up a schema, and here we've set up the schema. Our new schema is this guy. And then they're just injecting it in. They're saying schema, and then they're adding it to the model. And then we create a new one. That's right here. We've created a new URL. And then .save, and then they're doing a function. Cool, this is what we wanted. So I'm going to copy this code here, and then that's in the .save method. So new URL.save. And then if there's an error, return the error and console log it. Or if it's a success, then we can still say document inserted successfully, and then we just request JSON. And then I think we return. Cool. So now let's save that. But instead, so now what we're saying is the new URL.save. So if we save it, we're going to pass the error in. If there's an error, we'll console log the error, and it will probably break. And then we're going to pass. And then if there's no error, we're going to pass this the result.json. And but here what we want to do is say our new URL dot short URL. And then the original URL, we're going to want to say new URL dot original URL, because that'll be saved as this parameter in there. And then we want to go new URL dot suffix here. And so if this all works right, we should just respond that it's been saved, and then we should say saved is equal to true, just so it kind of like shows people that who are users. Cool. So now I think we've done some pretty good work here. We've got a bunch of console logs in here, which will be interesting to look at. So we've already stopped the server, so I'm going to restart it. And then we'll go to useful programmer. Let's just start at the root. Oh, we've got an error. Schema is not defined. Schema is not defined. New schema. Now this is probably a pretty obvious error. So if I go schema is not defined like this, that's probably going to get me something. Yeah. Serial schema, new schema. Okay, so here we have new schema. We need to go new mongoose.schema. And so that makes sense because we've only defined we've never defined schema in our database with a capital S. All we've defined is mongoose. We've defined it up here. We've required it up here. We've defined it. We've connected using the right parameters. And then we scroll down to here and we're just saying, schema, but we don't have schema. It needs to be mongoose.schema. So here, when we say mongoose.schema, then we're working the proper way. Okay, cool. So now let's restart our server and see if that fixed our problem. Nice. So listening on 300 is exactly what we want to hear. So if I come back over here, refresh, we go to our URL shortening microservice. And then here we've got free code camp in here. Theoretically, we want to be able to set it up. Awesome. So we've got this. So this is the way my program is lit up. We've got our root _root, and that gets us up to here. And then we've added API short URL, and then so that's API and short URL, and then the suffix, which is this random thing. And we've got the suffix here, and it says that it's saved as true. So that's awesome. This is exactly what we wanted to do. Original URL didn't go in there. I wonder why that was. Okay, and you can see in here it says document inserted successfully, which means that we've got past our save function. And yeah, for some reason, the original URL is not there. So we need to figure out why that's not there. So document inserted successfully, and then we're going to say new URL. And I'm going to save that, and we're going to stop the server and restart it. I'm going to refresh this, and it says this guy will be there. Oh, okay, so our original URL is not being saved in there, and so maybe it has to do with our schema. Our original URL is here. It's got a suffix. It's got everything. So let's check our schema. Original URL as a string. Our short URL. Original URL. Client requested URL. Okay, so we can see now that each time this will be our suffix. This one has been working. This will be our suffix. So right now I want to find out if the client requested URL is getting passed in properly to this guy. Because it seems to me that our schema is having a problem. Wait a second, our schema is up here. Yeah, we've got short URL, original URL. Is that the same word? Original. Original. Okay, so we want to make sure we get that right. Original URL. Original URL. Okay, save it. I think it was a typo. npm start. Okay, we're back. API short URL. Oh, it's not there. Well, I'll just go back to the root for now, and then we'll go to the Microservices services project, and then post the URL. And cool, now the original URL is there. So now we're getting everything. So now we can do is say, we want to say, if you go to app, if you go and make a GET request to app short URL, and then this guy, we want this to go to the original URL, which is free code camp in this example. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like. This is what that would look like if we were doing it right? So if I enter this, it says it cannot get this. Okay, well, that's unacceptable. We got to make that happen. So I'm going to say app.get, and then we're going to say /API/short URL, and then / we're going to say we're going to say the suffix, and then we'll go and pass in a function. I have a request and a response. This is just regular node stuff. And then we're going to say, well, here it's kind of a tough one, right? Because when we pass this in, well, for now, let's just say res.json, and we'll pass back in the suffix, right? And I think it's rec.body.suffix would get us there. But let's just console.log rec.body. And I'm just going to make a little note so we can tell rec.body. And now this will tell us that if we're passing our GET request into here. So I'm going to cancel the Node app and restart the Node app. And then I'm just going to make this post request right away. Okay, so rec.body did not get us anything, and our response JSON object was completely off. So let's go back to here and let's see if we can get information on GET. App.post. Okay, this is all body parser stuff. This is all body parser stuff. We want to look for express. And so I want to find GET. App.get. That's what we're using, app.get. And so let's see here. Here's an example. .listen. User ID. Next. I want to find how they're getting the parameters from GET. I know we've done this in the past. I just can't remember what it was. Title. With a callback. Res.send. Okay, well, let's go back up and see where we did it before. App.get, res.json, rec.headers. We don't really need that. What we want is the timestamp stuff. That would tell us how to do this. Here we go, rec.params.that. Okay, cool. So we'll get back down here. I think it's rec.params.suffix. Rec.params.suffix. Okay, so let's save that, and I'm going to go back to our local one. I'm going to go back to the root URL, but we need to remember to restart our server. And I'm going to go shorten URL microservice, and then I'm going to post this. And now we have, a suffix, right? So what we want to do is go the api.short URL, and then put this guy in there. Nice. Okay, so our suffix is there. So we know that rec.params.suffix. So instead of logging it, let's say let the user generated short link is equal to this guy. And so now what we can do is try to find our whatever's in our database that matches this, right? Because now we have the short link, and this is a unique link that we are not going to see again. And so what we could do is we want to just be able to find it, right? And so we can look into our model, so our short URL, and we can say user, generated user requested URL is equal to short URL dot find. I'm just going out on a limb here, but that's how we'll pass it in. And then instead of replying with this, we're just going to do a redirect of some sort. But before we figure that out, let's just see if we can figure out the user requested URL. So I'm going to say that, and then we're going to pass that in. And the only reason I'm doing this is just so we can see what's happening. This could be the user there. This is the same as that, so we might as well use the variable. So our user generated short link. And sorry, I've been writing in Ruby a little bit too. We should be doing this in camel case in JavaScript. Cool. Okay, so we want to do the find. So how do we do find? Well, we want to do find using the mongoose. I'm pretty sure. Import mongoose from mongoose. Yeah. Okay, cool. So find. Here we go. This is it. So my model.find. So we can go my model.find. Now our model is short URL. Oh, cool. So really what I can do is just get rid of this. And so .find. And what do we want to find? We want to find a suffix to be equal to the user generated short link. Yeah, this came in just as a suffix, so this should be the user-generated suffix, not short link. That would be confusing. So the user-generated ix. So what this is doing is it's saying, go through the short URL group of all the records that we have there and find where a suffix is equal to this guy, and then do something. It's going to give us for each, meaning it's going to find more than one. We only want it to find one, so we won't really deal with that. But we want to say if there's an error, we want to return console.log the error. That's just kind of the habit of Node, from what I can tell. And then, let's see. Well, if that's happened, then we just want to redirect. We actually don't even need this information. So I'm just going to comment this out. And then the question is, how do you redirect in Express, right? Redirect is an Express thing. So we're going to go redirect. So res.redirect, and then we just pass in a URL. So res.redirect. Well, maybe we could just pop this guy. Well, I'm not sure we've got this right just yet. So instead of saying res.json, I'm just going to say console.log, and we'll log this object, and we'll also say URL found. And here we've got the user generated requested URL. Oh no, that won't work. Okay, so instead of redirecting here, let's just make sure we've got, we'll just still do this res.json, and we'll just send this back to the user and just be like, hey, if we've got the right one, then we can worry about the redirect in a second. So right now, when we find it, if there's an error, we're going to return the error, we'll break out. But if we get it right, then we should be able to have it here. I might just go, so I'll save this and then stop the server, restart the server, come back over to here. I'm going to start at the beginning and then go to URL shortener and then post it. Okay, cool. We've got our suffix, so it's our API short URL, and it's this guy. So we want to make a GET request to there, and something happened. Okay, so user generated short link is not defined. Cool. So this is just a syntax error on line 139. 139, user generated short link. That's right. I wanted to make this suffix. So we're going to say user requested URL. This is not going to work right now. Okay, so we want to, I wonder how you do that. Find. We need more information on the find. So what's going on right now is I'm not finding them right? I want to find one. You can also find one. Let's do find one. User generated URL is equal to await dot find one by the suffix. And then we'll get rid of all this callback stuff. Just see if that works. And then we can say user requested URL. This will actually be an object, not the URL, but this is good for now. Let's npm start and give this a try again. So we've got we're logging in, we're doing it. We set our post request. We have a new API endpoint in which to visit, and we crashed again. Okay, user generated short link is not defined. Okay, I did not save this, so now I'm going to do it again. npm start, and we'll go through the process again. Oh, await is only valid in async functions. All right, so that did not help. We already got that guy. Wrapping it up. This is how to save. Await my model instance. Okay, so if that's not available, I think maybe we can do the find one here. Just find one suffix, and then we just, instead of doing a wait, we'll go with a follow-up function. So function of rec and error and docs, and then we'll say if there's an error, then return the console log the error. And then if what's the other thing? Else we want to return this. I guess docs. Return docs.for each. Docs at position. Return doc. That should be like that. I wonder if this is going to work. Anyways, I saved that. Start the server again. All right, it's listening. I wonder if that worked. That's crazy. Came over here, URL shortening service. Make one for free code camp. This one, we want this short URL to redirect to free code camp. Cool. So here we have another error. Looks like starting at object constructor native topology, converting circular JSON. Okay, well, let's think about this. Okay, so I did a tiny bit of research and I find out that there's that we want to do find. Yeah, well, here's the way we want to do it. Here we've done find. Instead of find one, we'll just go find. And then the cool thing about find is you can just, instead of doing this stuff right here, you go rec.find and then you say dot then. And then this will take whatever happens. So the data will come in as found URL. It'll be URLs. And then what we'll want to do is, yeah, this is going to be like a function. So function. And then in the found URLs, we're going to pass, in the found URLs, we're going to say we want to return the found URLs dot the found URLs, because this is going to be all the ones that they get, and so we want to just take the first one. And so yeah, if I save this and then let's restart the server. We go back to our localhost. Oh wow, look, it worked. Well, here it didn't actually find anything, so it just passed it in because we restarted our service. So let's start at the beginning and see how this works. So URL microservices, we pass in free code camp, we get a API URL. If we pass this in, okay, it's not working, but we are getting things, we're making things happen. So the last console log we said was the document was inserted correctly. We already know that that's happening, so we can get rid of that console log. And then we can also get rid of this thing here. So we just have a little bit cleaner of a console. And so let's just, if I were to console.log, the user requested URL, we could see what's going on with this object before we're passing it as a redirect, right? So if I save this, stop this guy, restart the server, and yeah, we can start from scratch again. Go to the URL service, post the URL. Here we've got what looks like a valid API to shorten. And so now we want this to pass us the right thing. Okay. So it's passing us a promise. Cool. And so what's happening here is we're having asynchronous JavaScript issues. Yeah, user request URL. What's happening in here is that the backend's probably finding it. This find is taking a moment or two. And in that time, we finished this, and we might have saved user request URL after we've actually generated this. So what we want to do here is, instead of saving it as a variable, we want to wait until it's ready to execute, and then we're going to just go, we could console.log this here and just say the found URLs, found URLs at position 0. and then we could probably redirect at that point. And that's kind of confusing stuff, but this is asynchronous JavaScript, so I think that that's what's happening here. So let's cancel this and run it again. We'll start from the beginning again. URL shortener, free code camp. We've got our short URL here. Okay, I'm getting more. Unhandled promise. It's not defined. User requested URL. Oh, okay, cool. But here, look at this. Okay, so in here, we've got the right data. So this is what the found URLs at position 0 is. So this should be our, we could say that, we could call this one let URLs to URL for redirect is equal to the position 0. And so when we're getting this at the position 0, so now our URL for redirect is this object. And so what we can do now, well, really, we don't have to do anything. Now we can just go to our Mongoose, no, was it our Express, right? Yeah, express.redirect. Because we're getting this data now, right? So we know that we want to redirect the people to the original URL. So we can go res.redirect. And I'm going to console this URL for redirect just so we can see it. Because I'm thinking that this is going to work on our next iteration. And then we don't want to redirect to example.com. We want to redirect to the URL for redirect, which is going to be going to the original URL. So we want to get that going to .original URL. Okay, and then if I save this and restart the server, I feel kind of confident that this is going to work this time. Oh wow, it just did. Okay, so localhost, we go to our URL Microservices project. We put in free code camp. We could put in usefulprogrammer.org, post that URL, useful programmer portfolio page, API short link. So this is the short link that should take us to useful programmer now. So now if I copy that, put that in here. Now this is going to work if it goes to the useful programmer webpage. Nice. Okay, so that is a success. Awesome. It's working locally. It's not working in production yet, right? So let's shut down. Oh, and look, our URL for redirect was posted here, so we can see we're working with the right thing. But yeah, this is working now. Let's get rid of the console log now because we don't need it. This is annoying me. I think that what we should start doing is start using ES6 on this project because we could just go like that. And that makes it look much cleaner. Same thing here. But this is just refactoring. You really don't need to do this stuff. It just makes it so it's easier to read, in my opinion. That's the exact same thing as doing it the other way. I'm only going to do that for this project for now. We can do our short redirect here, make this one work like that. And then this is for the shortening service. So yeah, here we have created our model and saved our schema at the same line. We could have extended these, but it was pretty easy because we have such a small model. And then we're adding our body parser, and we're making it so that it uses JSON. And then we're saying, we're adding, this is what somebody does if they make a post request to our API. They make it to this address, and then first off, what we do is we take the body of the request and we pull out the URL from that request. We set our suffix. We create a new suffix in which we generate a short ID. So that's just the one thing that generates this kind of like crazy looking suffix here. Our new URL is equal to a new short URL. So here we're creating the new one with the data in it. And so we're setting it to the directory name plus the API, and then we're adding the suffix in at the end. And then we're saving the original URL that the client passed in. So in this example, it's free code camp. In this example, it's useful programmer. And then we're saying, okay, now save that URL. So we're saving it to our MongoDB database. And to do that, we're using the save function. If there's an error, then log the error and stop the process. But if there's not, Then we respond with it was saved. We respond with the new short URL. We respond with the original URL and the suffix. And then finally, so somebody now knows, okay, you've got it. If they did, Wall Street Journal. Oops, we're not running our server right now. So yeah, let's get that done. npm start. Okay, so the services here, if they post the URL, this is the original URL, which they'll be directed to, and then this is the API. So if you go API short URL and then this crazy suffix, you should be redirected to wallstreetjournal.org, which is not a website. So we actually haven't validated it the way that they said that you should, but my guess is since it passed before I even pushed this to production, they're not even going to know. Okay. So yeah, then we get redirected there. So now if we go to the redirect, what we do is we pull in the suffix, we check for the suffix, and then we find it based on the suffix. And then once the find happens, we get our found URLs, and then we say, well, the one that we want to use is the first one in the list, and then we want to redirect to that URL. And so that's how that works. And so yeah, it's not cool that wallstreetjournal.org works, because it shouldn't. It should be wsj.com. And so yeah, it works like that. So we're not actually validating them properly, but that's no problem for now. I think we should just get this up to production. So right now, if we go get status, we're going to see that we have changed our package JSON, and we've modified our server, and we've updated our index view, and we've added to the views with this microservice one. So I'm going to say git add, and I'm going to add all the file. And so you can tell that they're all added because they're green now. I just did git status just to show you. Git commit -m. And now what we're going to do is say add mongoose, MongoDB, body, parser, and short ID to package JSON. Update server.js with all functionality for short URL. Update index page to display link to short URL tool. And finally, add information page on URL shortening microservice. Cool. And then so that's going to all be in the commit message. So now I'm going to say git push Heroku master. So this is going to be pushed up to Heroku. So if you were to look at this right now on our portfolio page, nothing happens if I refresh the page here. Nothing happens if I refresh the page here now, but now that we've completed and our build was successful, now if we refresh our production app, we're going to see a new addition because we have pushed our URL shortening microservices to production. And so now you can see at usefulprogrammer.portfolio and Heroku URL shortening microservices, we have this here. So now if we post the URL, oh cool, it actually came up. This is going to work. Yeah, app API. I don't know why it has app there. Anyways, let's see what happens. That should go to free code camp. Oh wow, so it's working in production too. Wow, awesome. Okay, cool. So what we can do is just take this main URL and bring it over here and post it into here. And now we've got a successful web app working here. We can also go to your GitHub project and your repository and post that into the GitHub link as well. And then you can say, I've completed this challenge. And that's it for that one. There's a bunch of stuff that we could do to kind of make it a little bit better, but for now, we're just going to keep moving on through because this has been a pretty long video. Hope you guys enjoy this one. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video.